Welcome back, everyone. This is Uhfgood. Um, I keep saying a lot too, don't I? Okay, so after ranting a little bit, let's get back to our thing here. It says after the start method signature is a code block. This defines all the code that is executed whenever a method is called. Calling a method is how you use it. You need to do this yourself later. To return to the factory analogy, the method declaration is how the machine in the factory works, and calling the method is actually making use of that machine. A method signature declaration followed by the code block are together known as a method definition. The terms method declaration and method definition are commonly interchanged when talking about C# because they happen at the same time. The difference only really matters in other languages such as C++. 7. Now is a good time to talk about the order in which things are written in class. Keeping with the factory and machines analogy, it doesn't matter where in your factory the machines are, but the order in which the machines perform their operations is very important. C# doesn't matter which order the methods are declared in class, but the order in which methods perform their operations matters a lot. The last two parts of the script are another comment and another method declaration. The update method is another special method for mono behaviors. It's called every frame before something is rendered to the screen. Now you have a basic understanding of some of the parts of the default script. Let's customize the script for your game. Okay, so we just did that. Okay. Create variables for horizontal and vertical axes. Your player movement script needs to take user input and translate that into character movement. Okay, so, alright. The first thing you're going to need to do is to get some data from Unity's input system. The script needs to check what's happening with the input all the time, and since update is called every frame, it makes perfect sense to check the input there. But what specifically does it need to check? It makes sense to move the character using the arrow keys or WASD, so the script needs to check the values of those specific keys on the keyboard. It can check whether or not each of those keys are individually held, either held or not, and decide what the character should do or not. But there's an alternative that'll make this a little easier. Unity has an input manager that defines various buttons and axes which can be found by name. For example, it has an axis called horizontal, which is represented by the A and D keys and the left and right keys. So by checking that, the player's computer could decide whether the character should move right or left. Write the code to create your variables. Let's get started. Add the following code line inside the update method braces. Now, before I do anything, let's go ahead and actually do this. Okay, so and then I will actually type in the code. So, following line inside the update method braces. Okay, so looks like auto indentation. How come? Alright, let's do this something here. Let's move my keyboard a little bit so that I can go ahead and type this stuff in properly. Okay, so floating point number horizontal equals input dot get axis. Horizontal. Okay. And semicolon. Needs semicolon because that's the end of a statement. Should now look like this, which it kind of does. It looks a little differently. What does the new line do? And why is my mouse stuck? Pardon me. Okay. Okay, so what does this new line do? I don't know. What does it do? In short, the new line of code is telling the computer create a new float variable and call it horizontal and set that variable equal to the result of this method call. Classes are factories and methods are machines. In those factories, variables are boxes containing stuff in those factories. In other words, variables are a way of storing data. The data you need to store is the value of the horizontal input axis. In Unity, input axes return a number between -1 and 1. This type of data is called a float. A float represents a number with decimal places. There are a few pieces of important syntax structure in this line of code. In C#, an equal sign means assign whatever is on the right, the result of a method, to the variable on the left, a newly created float variable. The full stop between input, full stop, the period you mean the period between input and get access allows the computer to access something inside the previous object. Get access is a method within an input, so to get from input to get access, a full stop is used, or a period. You don't say full stop because full stop has to do with, like, typewriters or something. C# is a code made up of things called statements. Each statement can contain one or more instructions of the computer and can be thought of like sentences. A semicolon marks the end of a statement, so the functions like a full stop does at the end of a sentence. Why do you use the term full stop? It's almost like what telegraph. Stop. Meet me at the station. Stop. Bring money. Stop. Full stop. Okay. Anyways, step is completed. How did you create that variable? Let's explore your code, what your code is doing in a little bit more detail. You have the class input, and you're drilling into that to find the method called getAccess. You're then calling that method by putting parentheses after the name. However, unlike start and update, getAccess is a parameter. There's a piece of data that needs to perform its task. Specifically, getAccess needs the name of the access it's trying to find the value of. You're trying to find the horizontal axis value here, so you have given that as a parameter. The data type for this piece of information is called a string. This refers to a string of characters, for example, a word or sentence. By putting speech marks around the word horizontal, you're instructing the computer that should be treated like a string. Once the computer has retrieved the value of the axis, it will need to store it somewhere. To the left of the method call, you have introduced a new float variable called horizontal and set it equal to the value found from getAccess. Next, add another line of code to find the value of the axis called vertical, and store that in a variable called vertical. The update method should look like this. So I do the same thing, except for I do vertical. So let's go ahead, float vertical equals input dot get access. That's interesting, because I put interesting vertical and a semicolon. Well, it doesn't want me to put white space in between the parentheses and the quotes, so I guess that will be fine. I guess I'll leave it. Update method should look like this. You now have the values for both horizontal and vertical axes. The next step is to combine them into a vector so that they can be used to change position. Okay, so I'm going to try Control S, and hopefully I don't need to do anything else other than that to save it, and it looks like it's good. Mark as completed. Make a vector. Okay, so vector, even though I have a general idea what a vector is, I'm not 100% familiar with vectors. They're usually a I don't know, some sort of math thing where basically it has a position in 2D or 3D space and a direction. In this case, it's just a position, so it'll be a three field vector, or for the three dimensions. Unity 3D space is represented by 3 coordinates, which together made a vector. This data type to represent a vector in Unity is called vector 3. This is what a game object's position is represented by, so you'll need to make a vector 3 representing that change. The movement that the user input represents is fundamental to this class, and you may need to use it for other things too. With this in mind, it's important to consider the scope of the variable you need to create. The scope of the variable is the area of code where it can be used. Usually this is as simple as a code block which is declared. For example, both float variables you just declared are in the scope of the whole of the update method, because that is the code block in which they were declared. They are said to be local to the update method. If you want to use a variable in multiple different methods, you can create variables outside this method scope. These are local to the class instead. Above the method definitions, add the following line: vector 3 m movement. And I don't know why they decide to do like some sort of modified Hungarian notation, but m, that thing went out in the 90s, I believe. Anyways, vector 3 movement, semicolon. Your script should now look like this. Da 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 da, and da 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 da. Okay, the new line of code is instructing the computer to create a vector 3 variable called mMovement that you can use wherever you want in the player movement class. naming conventions. But what does the M mean at the beginning of the name? Mean at the beginning of the name. This is part of something called a naming convention. Naming conventions are used to identify a particular class or object, class of object. In this project, we'll be using Unity's internal naming convention. All variables start with a lowercase letter, but subsequent words start with an uppercase letter. This is called camel case. With the exception to this as non-public member variables, which start with the M underscore prefix, and all the words that start with an uppercase letter. This is called Pascal case. It is. I don't remember that being Pascal case, but whatever. Member variables are the ones that belong to a class rather than a specific method. The M part of the non-public member variables comes from being member variables. Okay, so that's completed. Okay, so set the values for your variable. I think I'm going to go ahead and stop here, and we'll catch you in the next video. And I want to thank you for watching, and please like, share, subscribe, and whatever, depending on whether you're on YouTube or someplace else. Right now I have videos in BitChute, and so they're just copied or uploaded from YouTube anyways. But you know, whatever, share it, get people to watch it. You know, if you think if you find it interesting, I think somebody will find it interesting. So